The impending summer of 1943, Camp Crossville in Tennessee. The brown liquid sizzling in a glass bottle hypnotized a German soldier who had never seen anything like it. After 2 years of fighting in North Africa spent on hard breadcrumbs and ersatz coffee, this sweet carbonated drink, called Coca-Cola, represented something incredible that had become a reality. The cost of a drink in the camp canteen was only 5 cents, the same price that, according to the guards, American children paid using their pocket money. That summer, across the entire American prison camp system, 371,683 German prisoners of war were confronted with a reality that completely contradicted everything that Nazi propaganda had instilled in them about American weakness. They discovered a country where ice cream was a common dessert, where soft drinks were considered every day, and chocolate bars were so common that guards handed them out. These simple foods, treats that most German children have never tasted, systematically destroyed the Nazi ideology more effectively than any propaganda program. The mathematics of abundance was written in sugar and soda, in chocolate and ice cream, demonstrating American industrial might, which turned German hardships not into a noble sacrifice, but into senseless suffering. What started as an amazement at American sweets has turned into a complete psychological transformation. The end of the desert. The surrender of the Africa Corps in Tunis in May 1943 led approximately 250,000 German and Italian soldiers into Allied captivity. These veterans of the desert battles who, under Rommel's command, pushed the British back to Egypt, expected harsh treatment in captivity. Nazi propaganda prepared them for American brutality and starvation. Instead, just a few hours after the surrender, they encountered American K-rations. These field rations, which American soldiers used to complain about, contained treasures: crackers, processed cheese, candies, fruit bars, instant coffee, sugar pills, and cigarettes. The German soldiers, who had been living on minimal rations for months, perceived these emergency kits as a feast. According to military documents, in distribution camps in North Africa, the U.S. Army served pancakes with syrup, fresh eggs, and milk, products that disappeared from the diet of the German Army many years ago. The systematic feeding of the enemies with excellent food began immediately, although its psychological impact would only be realized later. A German officer later testified to the International Red Cross. "We expected to be starved as prisoners. Instead, the Americans fed us better than our own army." This confusion about American resources was the beginning of our Enlightenment. The transportation of prisoners of war on Liberty ships across the Atlantic in the summer of 1943 provided an intensive training course in American abundance. These vessels, produced on an unprecedented scale, one ready every 42 hours at the peak of production, transported up to 30,000 prisoners to the United States every month. Naval records show that the rations for prisoners on board these ships corresponded or even exceeded the standard norms for the crew, about 3,500 calories per day, including fresh bread, meat, vegetables, as well as coffee with sugar and milk. Refrigeration systems, standard equipment on American ships, kept food fresh throughout the 2-week passage. The most striking thing is that documented evidence claims that ice cream was served repeatedly during Atlantic crossings. In the ship's log of the USS General M.B. Stewart for July 1943, there is a record of serving ice cream to prisoners on the 4th of July, using a ship's apparatus that produced 10 gallons in one cycle. For people who hadn't seen ice cream since before the war, this frozen dessert in the middle of the ocean was beyond comprehension.
When ships docked at ports such as Norfolk and Newport News, German prisoners of war encountered an America that Nazi propaganda declared impossible. The Norfolk Naval Base, covering 4,300 acres with extensive berthing facilities, handled more cargo daily than the major German ports on a weekly basis. At the port exchanges, shops for dock workers, the prisoners caught a glimpse of shelves filled with chocolate bars from major manufacturers such as Hershey, Mars, and Nestle. Military procurement documents for 1943 show that these stores had dozens of varieties of candy sold at standard prices, 5 cents for most chocolate bars. The same price is throughout America. Traveling inland by train has become an extension of learning. Unlike the cattle trucks used for transportation in Europe, German prisoners of war rode in passenger wagons, and full meals were served in the dining wagons. Documented menus for July 1943 included fried chicken, vegetables, pie, and coffee. The prisoners discovered that this was not a special treatment, but a standard American rail service. A system of prisoner-of-war camps built across America housed prisoners in conditions that exceeded the requirements of the Geneva Convention. The Crossville, Tennessee camp, typical of large facilities, had electric lighting, hot water, flush toilets, and heated barracks. But it was the camp stores, the so-called PX stores, that had the most profound impact. According to the reports of the Army Quartermaster Service, numerous brands of soft drinks were sold in the camp stores: Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, RC Cola, various chocolate bars and confectionery, ice cream where cooling allowed, cigarettes and tobacco, fresh fruits and snacks, as well as beer with an alcohol content of 3 2/10%. The prisoners received 80 cents a day for their work, and later the rate was raised to $1. With the price of a 5-cent bar of chocolate and the same price for Coca-Cola, a day's salary could buy 16 goods in abundance beyond the reach of the German imagination, where such products, if available, required special connections. Coca-Cola has become a symbol of American industrial democracy. The company's production reached remarkable levels during the war. Corporate records show that 5 billion bottles were produced in 1943 alone. The military contract guaranteed American military personnel around the world Coca-Cola for 5 cents per bottle. This commitment required unprecedented logistics. German prisoners discovered that this soft drink, unknown to most before capture, was ubiquitous in America. Supplies were regularly delivered to each camp. The work teams saw vending machines and refrigerators everywhere, at gas stations, factories, and schools. Americans of all ages and classes drank it casually, throwing away half-empty bottles without hesitation. Standardization amazed the technically savvy prisoners. Coca-Cola tasted the same regardless of whether it was consumed in Maine or Texas, a feat of quality control surpassing anything achieved by the German industry. The historical records from the Coca-Cola Company's archives confirm that many prisoner-of-war camps received weekly shipments of 200 to 300 crates, each containing 24 bottles. Camp Hearn, Texas, alone consumed about 7,000 bottles a week in the summer of 1943. Ice cream in American prisoner-of-war camps seemed impossible to the Germans, who had not seen it since pre-war times. However, Army records confirm that ice cream was regularly served in camps with adequate refrigeration during the summer months. The military considered ice cream vital for morale, so important that specialized ice cream production ships were built for the Pacific Fleet. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, the celebration of the 4th of July in 1943 included ice cream made right on the spot. The prisoners watched as manual freezers produced gallons using ice, salt, cream, sugar, and flavorings. Such careless use of scarce resources, ice in July, cream, sugar for entertaining meals, demonstrated priorities that the Germans could not comprehend. By 1944, electric ice cream makers had appeared in many camps. The variety available, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, and pecan butter, exceeded the range of German ice cream parlors before the war. Prisoners could buy popsicles for 10 cents, ice cream sandwiches for the same price, or cups with different flavors. Army purchase records show that large camps ordered between 50 and 100 gallons of ice cream weekly during the summer months. The frequency varied depending on location and season, but the prisoners regularly enjoyed this frozen luxury that had disappeared from German life. Sugar consumption in American prison camps had a particularly strong impact. In Germany, sugar was strictly rationed. Civilians received 280 grams per month, if it was available at all. In the American camps, sugar stood in bowls on the tables in the canteens for unlimited use. The quartermaster reports from 1943 to 1945 show that the camps received 100-pound bags of refined sugar every week. The camp bakeries used sugar liberally. Cakes, biscuits, and pies regularly appeared on the menu. Coffee, tea, cereals, and desserts were sweetened in the canteens without restrictions. One documented incident from Camp Ellisville, Alabama, illustrates this contrast. In August of 1943, wet weather caused several hundred pounds of sugar to solidify, making it difficult to use. Instead of steaming it and restoring it, as the Germans would have done, the kitchen staff simply threw it away and ordered new supplies. The German prisoners who worked in the kitchen were reportedly upset by this waste. American chocolate consumption patterns have also revealed democratic abundance. Major manufacturers, Hershey, Mars, Nestle, produced millions of tiles every month despite military restrictions. The military alone purchased 380 million pounds of chocolate products during the war years. There were many varieties of chocolate in the prisoner of war camp stores. Standard Hershey bars, D rations, emergency chocolate bars, and various chocolate-containing candies were available for 5 or 10 cents. The prisoners discovered that Americans have preferences among chocolate brands, casually choosing one instead of the other. The Red Cross packages distributed monthly to the prisoners included chocolate bars among other items. American Red Cross records showed that the standard packages contained chocolates or candies, 2 instant coffees, processed cheese, crackers, canned food, cigarettes, and soap. These packages complemented regular rations, providing luxury items that exceeded what German civilians received as basic rations.
Thanksgiving Day in 1943 introduced German prisoners to American holiday abundance. This purely American celebration demonstrated a national coordination of consumption that overshadowed the German organizational efforts. Army records confirm that all POW camps served at traditional Thanksgiving dinner: roast turkey with stuffing, mashed potatoes and gravy, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, vegetables, pumpkin pie, coffee, and milk. The logistics required to provide turkey dinners to 425,000 prisoners of war and millions of American troops around the world demonstrated organizational strength. The fact that German prisoners received the same dish as American soldiers emphasized equality of treatment, contrary to the Nazi racial hierarchy. Christmas of 1943 brought unexpected generosity from American civilians. Church groups, public organizations, and individuals sent parcels to German prisoners of war. The American Friends Service Committee alone distributed 50,000 Christmas packages to enemy prisoners. These parcels usually contained homemade cookies, sweets, toiletries, games and books, cigarettes, and writing materials. Local communities near the camps often provided additional support. In Tonkawa, Oklahoma, townspeople delivered homemade treats to German prisoners at the Tonkawa camp. In Hearne, Texas, church groups brought Christmas cookies and candy to Camp Hearne. This civic kindness towards enemies fundamentally challenged the Nazi ideology. The Americans, whose relatives fought against Germany, nevertheless showed mercy to the German prisoners, demonstrating strength through mercy, not through revenge. As the labor shortage worsened, German prisoners of war increasingly worked outside the camps, becoming first-hand witnesses of American food production. By 1944, about 100,000 prisoners were working in agriculture and the food industry, gaining a complete understanding of American abundance. In the gardens of Michigan, the prisoners harvested cherries intended for the production of maraschino cherries, those bright decorations that crown the ice cream. The volume overwhelmed them. Individual gardens produced tons of fruit for decorative purposes. At the canneries, the prisoners observed quality control, which rejected completely edible food due to minor defects. Del Monte's records for 1944 show that approximately 15% of fruits were rejected for canning due to size irregularities or small spots. Usually they were sent to livestock feed. Sugar beet processing in Colorado and Nebraska has revealed agricultural mechanization that surpasses German achievements. Individual farms produced more sugar beet than entire German regions.
The prisoners learned that American sugar production from both cane and beet reached about 7 million tons annually, which explained the abundance they witnessed. German prisoners working near schools witnessed early versions of organized school lunch programs. The children received hot meals, including milk, protein, and vegetables. The law on the National School Lunch Program formalized this in 1946, but pilot programs were already in operation during the war. The German observers were particularly impressed with the milk supply program. Many schools provided children with fresh milk every day. The logistics of delivering tons of schools daily demonstrated an organizational strength that Germany could not achieve for military supplies. Some school canteens offered ice cream for an additional fee. The concept of children buying frozen desserts at school while German children faced food shortages made a deep impression on the prisoner observers.
When prisoners of the minimum security regime under guard ate in American eateries, they were faced with democratic abundance. These small restaurants offered menus that could decorate elite German establishments and were accessible to anyone with modest means. The documented prices for 1944 show a hamburger for 25 cents, a Coca-Cola for 5 cents, a piece of pie for 15 cents, an ice cream sundae for 25, a full lunch at a special price from 65 to 75 cents. The equality of service, anyone could order anything, contradicted German social stratification. The factory worker and the bank president ate identical dishes at adjacent counters, served by the same waitress at the same price. As the prisoners gained access to American publications, they discovered production statistics that dwarfed the German efforts. The documented figures for American production in 1944 are approximately 7 million tons of sugar. Chocolate and cocoa products are 380 million pounds, military only. Coca-Cola has 5 billion bottles, data for 1943. Ice cream is over 500 million gallons, 119 billion pounds of milk. German production over the same period, sugar is heavily rationed, mainly from beetroot. Chocolate is for military use only. Soft drinks are of minimal production. Ice cream was practically non-existent. Milk is strictly rationed. These figures, openly published in the American media, demonstrated that American military production exceeded German peacetime peaks. By the end of 1944, German prisoners of war were sending food parcels to Germany rather than receiving them. Using the camp earnings, the prisoners bought American products to send home: chocolate bars, instant coffee, canned food. The records of the International Red Cross confirmed this reversal. German prisoners in America sent approximately 11 million parcels to Germany during their captivity, most of which contained food. The impact on German families receiving American abundance from imprisoned relatives while they themselves faced starvation in freedom deeply undermined Nazi ideology. American rationing, introduced during the war, exposed the gap between societies. Americans complained about the sugar norm of 2 pounds per month per person, which was more than 3 times the German norm when it was available. The norm of meat in America was 28 ounces per week per person, which exceeded what the Germans received monthly. Even with rationing, Americans maintained consumption levels that Germans considered an impossible luxury. The records of the Office of Price Control show that in 1944, Americans consumed 74 pounds of sugar per capita despite rationing, which was 10 times higher than German consumption. In addition to Coca-Cola, the captives discovered the American soft drink industry. Pepsi Cola, Dr. Pepper, RC Cola, Orange Crush, and regional brands competed across the country. The sheer variety, the multitude of companies producing similar products, demonstrated a market abundance impossible in a German-controlled economy.
Bottling plants were operating in every major city. The technologies, carbonation, bottling, capping, and labeling, were standardized and effective. Individual factories produced millions of bottles annually. The distribution network reached every small town, gas station, and grocery store. By the end of the war, the production of American soft drinks had reached billions of bottles annually, dozens of bottles per American citizen per year. The output of this one industry exceeded entire sectors of German consumer production.
The spring of 1945 brought the final blow. As American troops advanced through Germany, German prisoners of war in America watched newsreels showing American soldiers handing out chocolate and chewing gum to German children. The joy of these children receiving American sweets that their own government could not provide them completed the ideological debacle. The contrast was striking. American soldiers advancing into enemy territory carried with them enough sweets to distribute them, while the German state, which promised triumph, brought famine. Films about the liberation of concentration camps showed how American troops shared rations with skeletal survivors, demonstrating humanity towards the victims of the regime the German soldiers served. Between 1945 and 1946, German prisoners of war returned to their destroyed homeland. Many prisoners gained significant weight in American captivity, while their families lost weight due to starvation in German freedom. They brought the knowledge of abundance to a land of absolute scarcity. Medical examinations showed that the German prisoners of war generally returned healthier than they had been captured. They returned to families weakened by deprivation. This physical proof of American affluence against German deprivation was undeniable. Many prisoners brought home the last packages of the Red Cross, chocolate, coffee, and canned goods, that have become family treasures. Children who had forgotten the taste of chocolate received Hershey bars from fathers who regularly ate ice cream in POW camps. Former prisoners of war have become unexpected supporters of the Marshall Plan. They saw American abundance, which was not a zero-sum game. Prosperity through production, not through conquest. Their testimony that Americans could afford to rebuild their enemies influenced the Germans to accept American aid. These people understood that American power comes from productive capacity, not exploitation. They saw a society rich enough to waste food fighting a global war. This mental model, creation rather than conquest, shaped West Germany's economic approach. The German economic miracle of the 1950s was partly built on knowledge gained in American prisoner of war camps. Former prisoners of war who witnessed American production methods, distribution systems, and consumer abundance applied these lessons to German reconstruction. They learned that mass production can make luxury goods affordable. Standardization ensures quality and efficiency. Consumer abundance creates political stability. Industrial democracy can transcend authoritarian control. These lessons learned from Coca-Cola and ice cream shaped a generation of German businessmen and political leaders. The transformation of German prisoners of war through American food abundance is documented in military quartermaster records, International Red Cross reports, corporate production records, especially in the Coca-Cola archives, POW correspondence censored but preserved, post-war interviews and memoirs, as well as academic research, particularly the extensive research of Arnold Kramer. Arnold Kramer, a leading historian of German prisoners of war in America, concluded that food abundance was central to the ideological transformation. His research confirmed that ordinary American affluence had achieved what formal re-education programs had failed to achieve: the complete destruction of Nazi myths about superiority.
Statistical review. The numbers tell an irrefutable story. The average consumption of prisoners of war from 1943 to 1946. Daily calories range from 3,300 to 3,600. 4 pounds of sugar per month available. Meat is 32 ounces per week. 1 quart of milk daily, available. Ice cream was served regularly in the summer. Unlimited soft drinks for 5 cents apiece. German civilian rations for the same period. Daily calories range from 1,200 to 1,500. Sugar is 280 grams per month, if available. 10.5 ounces of meat per week, often unavailable. Milk is strictly rationed. Ice cream didn't exist. Soft drinks are not available. These differences were not propaganda, but a documented reality. Enemy prisoners ate better than German civilians, proving that American abundance extended even to defeated enemies. The experience of prisoners of war with American food culture profoundly influenced post-war Germany. Coca-Cola returned to West Germany in 1949, becoming a symbol of the American alliance. Ice cream parlors, imitating American soda fountains, have appeared in German cities. Chocolate bars and chewing gum have become symbols of recovery. Former prisoners of war often became importers of American food products, realizing their attractiveness from personal experience. They knew that these products symbolized more than taste. They symbolized abundance, democracy, and modernity. The introduction of supermarkets in Germany in the 1950s was supported by former prisoners of war, who saw American grocery stores. They understood that democratic abundance requires new methods of distribution, not just increased production. In various post-war interviews and memoirs, German prisoners of war consistently referred to food abundance as a transformative factor. A former officer of the Africa Corps said in an interview in 1975, "We expected to defeat a weak, divided America. Instead, we found a nation that could give ice cream to the enemies. It was then that we realized that we had lost more than the war. We've lost our whole worldview." Another veteran interviewed for a documentary in 1985 recalled, "My first Coca-Cola was like a sip of the future. It was sweet, fizzy, completely unnecessary, and available to anyone for a nickel. This drink contained everything that Nazi Germany was not: abundant, democratic, joyful." These testimonies, gathered over the decades, confirm that American food abundance has achieved what military defeat alone could not: complete ideological transformation. The men who arrived as Nazi warriors left as witnesses of democratic prosperity. Historians recognize the experience of German prisoners of war in America as a surprisingly successful re-education through abundance rather than propaganda. The program succeeded because it relied on observation rather than teaching. The prisoners of war saw an American society functioning at the peak of productivity, while at the same time treating its enemies with dignity. The food aspect was crucial because it was universal. Everyone understands hunger and satisfaction. This is indisputable. The weight gain and improved health were obvious. Continuous 3 meals a day, plus shopping in the cafeteria. In comparison, the prisoners were well aware of German hardships. Every meal was a lesson in American industrial might. Each Coca-Cola demonstrated standardization and distribution. Every Sunday ice cream showed that abundance can be democratic. The children of prisoners of war grew up hearing about American abundance in POW camps. These stories, which initially seemed fantastic, were confirmed when West Germany recovered and American products became available. The mythology of American affluence, born in prison camps, shaped generations of German-American relations. Many children of prisoners of war later studied or worked in America, attracted by their fathers' stories of impossible abundance, and found that reality matched the stories. Supermarkets filled with various goods, soda fountains serving sundae, candy counters offering dozens of options. This multi-generational impact has gone beyond individuals. West German business culture has learned the lessons of consumer abundance, standardization of quality, and democratic markets. The economic miracle was not only in production, but also in creating abundance for ordinary citizens. Today, McDonald's operates more than 1,400 restaurants in Germany. Coca-Cola is ubiquitous. Ice cream has become commonplace. The transformation from scarcity to abundance that began in the American prison camps has been completed. However, the historical lesson remains powerful. Ideological transformation is through abundance, not through deprivation. Kindness, not cruelty. Demonstration, not propaganda. German prisoners of war who could not believe in ice cream and Coca-Cola in American prison camps witnessed the ultimate weapon of democracy: the ability to create such abundance that it could be carelessly shared with enemies. The story of German prisoners of war and American food abundance represents the most extraordinary victory in history, a war won by generosity, an ideology defeated by ice cream, a worldview shattered by soft drinks. These people experienced a transformation not through punishment, but through prosperity. They arrived believing in German superiority and American weakness. They left realizing that American strength comes from a productive capacity so vast that they can spend resources without worrying. A society that could give Coca-Cola to prisoners for 5 cents had power beyond military might. Sundae ice cream, with its layers of excess ice cream, syrup, whipped cream, nuts, and cherries, has become a metaphor for American abundance. Each component individually surpassed the German dreams. Collectively, they represented an impossible luxury that had become routine. The fact that the enemies could order supplements while German children were facing starvation revealed the full extent of the Nazi failure. Former prisoners of war often recalled specific moments of revelation: the sizzle of the first Coca-Cola, the first spoonful of ice cream, the first bite of a Hershey bar. These sensory memories carried more power than any argument. They tried democracy, and it was sweet. The transformation was complete and irrevocable. The people who marched for the Third Reich returned as apostles of abundance, carrying the revolutionary message that prosperity comes from freedom, not conquest. They learned that America's secret weapon was not military might, but the ability to give ice cream to enemies. In the end, the Coca-Cola bottles and ice cream servings served in American prisoner of war camps achieved what armies could only try to do: completely transform the hearts and minds of the enemy. German prisoners of war who could not believe in the existence of such abundance became his greatest witnesses, taking home the truth that democracy tastes like chocolate and freedom fizzes like soda. Their story reminds us that sometimes the greatest victories are won not by destruction, but by demonstration. Not by taking, but by giving. Not by hatred, but by the simple act of serving ice cream to enemies on a hot summer day. Men who survived American abundance as prisoners of war became the most unexpected ambassadors of freedom, forever transformed by the impossible reality of Coca-Cola and ice cream in American prisoner of war camps. We think this is one of the most fascinating and instructive episodes of the war. What do you think about this unusual way of winning? Share your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to learn more about little-known pages of military history.